It's been years since I last tried telling this story. Over the decades, I've come to accept it, but recent events have forced me to relive it. More on that later. I guess I ought to start at the beginning. Back in the summer of '97, I was a couple of weeks away from my second year at USD. We'd had a ridiculously shitty winter, and a lot of folks were out and about to make up for lost time. That, or they were just catching whatever stray sunshine they could get their hands on before things turned to shit again. I was no exception to the rule. I was hiking and fishing whenever I wasn't taking extra shifts at my part-time ranching job. I had a niece who'd turned 8, and I missed her birthday. I said it was because I was working, but honestly, I just plain forgot. I felt really bad about it. She's my only niece, and I wanted to get her something special. So, to make it up to her, I decided I would get her something unusual. A friend of mine told me there was a place up the Run-Along River where you can get these vibrant blue plants that sort of look like sunflowers. And since my niece was crazy about sunflowers, I figured I'd try to find one. There's almost no point in following the Run-Along River. It's too small to be on a map, and only the locals know it even has a name. There's plenty of fish, but the river is so cluttered you can't throw as much as a glance at it without getting caught in something. It's too shallow to run a boat, and the banks run too high for comfort. Basically, it's a shitty river, and no one goes there. Not unless they got a damn good reason, like trying to unbreak the heart of an enthusiastic second grader. I started out early in the morning, figured I'd be done by noon. I made it up the river at a slow and steady pace, scanning the banks for anything blue. I'd followed the river before, but things look different when you're really looking. You're starting to see past the forest and notice the bushes, the debris, and the swaying branches shielding the slowly pouring waters. It took me about 3 hours to find a couple of those flowers. They were about as tall as my arm, and really did look like sunflowers, but kinda blue. Strange how they only grow in that one particular spot. I picked them up with a trowel, roots and all, and stored them away in a plastic bag, making sure I didn't cut off any leaves. They really were vibrant. It was quiet out there. It's like the forest was empty, and all the birds and bees kept running down the river. It made me think there might be wildlife nearby, maybe something I ought to look out for. I got up with my prize and had a look around just to make sure there was nothing there. But there was. I'll never forget the first time I saw it. I thought there was something wrong with my eyes. I tried to blink it away, but it was still there. Moving my head back and forth and squinting, I came to realize it was an actual thing. I'll try to explain. It was a cube, at least 20 feet on each side. It was black and opaque, with no reflection whatsoever. It rested over the river, approximately 7 to 8 feet above the water. I say rested, and not hovered, because it had no kind of propellant. It didn't make noise, and it didn't move. It didn't shift or sway in the wind. It was completely still. I didn't know what to make of it. How can something so big not make any noise? So yeah, doubting my own sanity, I picked up a rock and chucked it at it. The rock passed straight through and landed on the other side of the river. Not a ripple, not a sound, nothing. I climbed down and waded into the river. Stepping on a rock and reaching all the way up, I managed to touch the cube with my right hand. There was a strange sensation to it. Not electric, but something. It was cold, but it didn't transfer to my fingers. There was no friction or texture to the surface, but it was solid. The edges were sharper than a knife. I didn't dare to touch them. I tried patting it, poking it. Nothing happened. After a couple seconds, I stepped down and got out of the water. I had to empty my boot. I sat there for a moment just looking at the cube thing, wondering what the hell it was supposed to be, or if it was going to do something. I didn't have a phone or camera or anything, so I couldn't really document it. Instead, I tried to remember as many details as possible about the area so I could make my way back with a witness later on. Using a knife, I carved a big X on the trunk of a tree. That'd have to do. I stayed there for about an hour watching the damn thing. Nothing happened. It was just there. After a while, I just got up and left. I couldn't get that damn thing out of my mind. I dropped off the flowers with my niece, and she was as happy as could be. She loved those things. Last I heard, she still has a couple. She keeps the seeds and replants them in the spring. Not that she needs to, they're not nearly as rare nowadays as they were back then. The moment I got out of there, I called my buddy Kevin. He was a bit of a physics nerd that I got to know back at USD. Real soldering and Excel charts kind of guy, you know? We were in different classes, but the same year. He didn't live that far away either, and I'd done him a couple of solid favors, mostly related to me having a car and him having poor planning. Calling him up was no big deal, but trying to explain what I needed help with was a whole other deal. "Kevin," I said, "I need your help with something." "Sure thing, boss. What you need?" "It's really hard to explain," I sighed. "I saw something in the woods. It might be gone by now, but I'd like someone else to take a look at it. Someone with an open mind and a bit of a know-how." "What? Like a UFO?" "Not a UFO," I said. "Not a Sasquatch or alien, nothing like that." Had my hopes up for a moment. "Is it legal?" "I ain't ever heard a law that said it ain't." "So what is it? What's it look like?" That part I could answer, but honestly I wasn't sure. It had looked like a cube, but watching it was such an unreal sensation. It wasn't so much a shape as it was the absence of one. But after a couple of seconds of thinking, I snapped out of it. "It's a cube, Kev. A big-ass cube." Kevin was out of town for a couple of days, but promised to get back to me the moment he got home. In the meantime, I tried to go about business as usual. I wanted to go check on the cube again, but there was something in me telling me that it was a bad idea. I couldn't get the damn thing out of my mind, and I didn't want to risk it disappearing or getting scared off or whatever. I had to play it cool. Even so, I couldn't help myself. I went back once more, 3 days later. It didn't take nearly as long as the first trip. I just checked for the X on the tree, looked up, and there it was. It wasn't going away. That time I'd brought some measuring tape and a camera. Turns out each side was exactly 21 feet and 8.16 inches. I also noticed something weird. If I held the measuring tape, it could touch the cube. But the moment I let go of it, it passed right through. It's like solidity was dependent on me being in direct contact, watching it, seeing it. I took a couple of photos. It was a bit tricky to get the whole thing in one shot, but I managed pretty well. I took the photos to work to show one of my colleagues, but he couldn't see it. To him, it was just a picture of a treetop. For one reason or another, the picture looked different to him than it did to me. I couldn't make sense of it. I thought he was messing with me for a moment, but apparently he thought the same thing about me. I was having some trouble at work. I kept getting sidetracked and forgetting what I was doing. Sometimes I'd zone out and no one would even question it. They'd walk right by or sit at my table as if I wasn't there. I once spent an entire lunch across from a coworker of mine, looking right at them, and they didn't even look up from their sandwich. They must have seen me staring, and yet it's like I wasn't even there. By the time Kevin called me, I was growing paranoid. Kevin didn't help. When he called me, the first thing he said was, "Sorry, I've been back for a few days. I forgot. Honest mistake." I picked Kevin up just after lunch the following weekend. I'd asked him to bring his science stuff, whatever that is. He wasn't taking that request lightly. He brought a kit the size of a table. Some of it wasn't even his. He'd borrowed some equipment from the university. He knew the guy who did inventory, and it was okay to borrow stuff as long as you used the sign-up sheet. Kevin was this lanky guy with long brown hair and thick-rimmed glasses like the old guy from Up. He looked like the kind of guy who'd get his face plastered in the paper for selling fake IDs or failing to hack the Pentagon. Solid guy, but awkward as hell. Tough to have a conversation with. He had so many interests that any kind of question was a minefield of rants waiting to happen. If you call a casket a barrel, he'll be sure to educate and correct you. But I figured that's the kind of guy you want to explain something you can't put into words, you know? We made our way up the run-along river. I tried showing him the photo I'd taken, but he couldn't see the cube there either. I could, though. Made me feel like I was going crazy. It was getting cloudy, so I hoped we'd be in and out before the rain caught up to us. Kevin was a bit slow, making sure every step was deliberate and safe. That, and he was scared of snakes. I've never seen a snake along that river, but trying to argue with Kevin is like trying to eat a brick. It won't help, and you'll end up with an aching jaw. It didn't take all that long before I saw it. I didn't even need to check for the tree. I saw the cube right around the bend. I pointed to it, shook Kevin by the shoulder, and called it out. "Right there," I said. "It's right there." "I don't see it." He squinted through his glasses. The damn thing was impossible to miss, and even then, he did. We walked closer. Using my fingers as a frame, I pointed it out. "It's right there, you can throw a rock at it. The damn thing is 20 feet, Kev, you telling me you can't see it?" "There's nothing there," he said. "I'm sorry, it's not a..." He paused and blinked. Then I noticed something. I could see the cube reflected in his eye. He lowered his voice as his jaw went slack. "Holy shit." I explained to him what I knew. The size, the first time I saw it, the fact that it didn't show up on a picture. Then I had an idea. I'd already shown it to him once, but what about now when he'd seen the real thing? Did that somehow translate to the picture? Kevin took the photo and looked up at the cube, nodding. "Yeah," he muttered. "Yeah, now I see it, here and there." He unpacked his kit and went absolutely bananas. For the first time, he was barely speaking. He wasn't giving me a lecture on anything. He was just stunned. Instead, he scrambled to get his instruments in order, but his hands were shaking so bad he dropped half of them. I bet there are a couple of screwdrivers left in the undergrowth to this day. "I can't believe this," I remember him saying. "I've never seen anything like it. Haven't even heard about it. What the hell is it?" We spent all day out there. He made some more exact measurements and determined that the surface of the cube was some kind of hyper-compact hydrogen solution. The cube didn't have a temperature when you touched it, but Kevin's instruments showed that it actually was well below 200 degrees Fahrenheit. He didn't have what he needed to get a more exact reading, as it was too cold. And yet, we could touch it with our bare hands and not feel a thing. I remember standing there by the bank of the river, watching Kevin run his left hand along the flat surface of the cube. "You really can't feel a thing," he said. "There's no resistance, but you don't slip either. It's like, I don't know, you're not really touching it." He was entranced by it, running his hand back and forth, back and forth. He didn't even notice the first drops of rain. "It's not a real thing, and it's not a vision, it's just..." Thunder rumbled in the distance as the rain picked up. I tore my eyes away from the cube, only to see the raindrops falling straight through it, pooling into the river. No matter what Kevin and I thought, it seemed that the world around us refused to accept it was there. We performed a series of tests and experiments over the coming weeks. While I'd been excited, it was nothing compared to Kevin's enthusiasm. He once brought a tent up there and camped out for an entire weekend. I was there several times a week too, but nowhere near as often. He was writing a paper about it, filming it, and taking pictures from every angle. No matter how amazed we were, it seemed that no one else could see it. He tried showing pictures and captured video of it to 6 different people, and neither of them saw it. All the while I was having trouble at work. I noticed that cattle were bumping into me more than usual. I almost got stepped on by a horse. I kept getting the feeling that I wasn't really there to them, that I was just background noise. It wasn't until I called out to them or touched them that they actually noticed, and even then they sort of dismissed me. But the weirdest thing was, once when I was on my way home from work, I stopped at a 4-way intersection and turned left, clearly in view of another driver, and he went straight ahead like I wasn't even there. I had to throw myself on the brakes, but he managed to scrape the left headlight. He threw himself on the brakes, leaving a long black trail on the asphalt. "You came out of nowhere," the other guy called out. "I have right of way. You can't rush me like that." "I was turning long before you rounded that corner," I called back. "You ain't seen me 'cause you're a shit driver. Unless you a fucking ghost, you're talking out your ass." I started to get that feeling more often, like I wasn't really there, like a ghost. People would bump into me on the street, skip my spot in the line at the deli, or pretend not to see me when I called out to them on the street. Not every day, mind you. It was just that one particular day every now and then. Most days were fine. It was really strange, and I started to get like a sixth sense for it. You kinda notice it when you have to turn your alarm off 6 times, as it doesn't register your touch. I decided it was time to discuss it with Kevin. It was becoming such a tangible and noticeable effect that he must have sensed it. Hell, knowing Kevin, he might even have figured it out. We had been talking less and less as he took more trips out there to study the cube, but he'd promised to let me know as soon as he figured something out. After 4 consecutive days of my calls getting ignored, I decided to go see him in person. It didn't surprise me that he wasn't at his place. There was only one place he'd be, I figured. Up the river. I went back up the run-along river one late afternoon. It was about 2 weeks before I was off to the university, and the weather was bouncing between scorching heat and desperate rainfall every other day, it seemed. I'd hit a pocket between the two, soaking the flat landscape in a dusky gray and a nasty wind. Good thing I didn't bring my lucky cap. That thing would have flown right off. It didn't take long for me to see the cube in the distance, and shortly after, Kevin. He was standing by its side, touching it with his left arm. He was just as fascinated as the first time we'd gone to see it. I don't use the word enthralled lightly, but if it was ever applicable, this'd be the time. Once I got closer, he called out to me. "Have you tried touching it and looking around?" he asked. "Things look different." "Different how?" I climbed down the side of the river and waded out into the water. I went right up to the cube, raised my hand, and stopped. Something was off. "You can see other things," Kevin mumbled. "This thing is not supposed to be here, so when it is, other things are too." "Like what, Kev?" Kevin was staring straight ahead, a little drool pooling at the corner of his mouth. His glasses were hanging on for dear life. The man was miles away. I snapped my fingers. "Kev?" No response. I rounded the side of the cube and almost tripped on my own feet. Kevin's left arm was fused to the side of the cube. His veins had grown dark, and the bones of his arm were elongated. It was long enough to reach the ground while standing straight. The fingers had congregated into a solid mitten like a cheap toy doll. Spots of crater-like pockets had broken out all across the skin on the left side of his body. "Jesus Christ, Kev." "It's not a problem," he muttered. "Not a problem. Don't you see what it's doing to you? Can't you see your arm?" "My arm?" he asked, furrowing his brow. "It's not a arm. Your left arm, Kev. Look at your left arm." "Not a arm," he repeated. "Not a leg, not a foot, not a head." "It's an arm, Kev. Look at your damn arm." For a moment, his eyes flickered. An instant later, his left arm flopped down, hanging lifelessly from his shoulder. All the blood had run out of it, leaving it dead and cold. It made a weak splash in the lazy river. His fingers twitched and curled like a dying spider. "Is it Thursday?" he asked. "I got here on Thursday." "It's Sunday, Kev." "You sure it's not Thursday?" There was something gleaming in his eye. I could see his breath grow shallow and his cheeks turn red. He shook his head. "Please tell me it's Thursday," he pleaded. "Please, just say it." "All right," I nodded. "All right, it's Thursday, Kev. Let's go get you some help." "Some help, yeah. Some help for my, He trailed off. After a couple of seconds, I finished his sentence for him. "For your arm, Kev." He looked down, and his expression strained like someone put the wrong key into the wrong lock. A sob escaped him as he turned away. "It's not a arm." Kevin was having some kind of panic attack. I packed up what I could and let him rest his healthy arm across my shoulders as I led him down the trail. Every now and then he'd sob or mumble some kind of nonsense. He seemed to bounce in and out of complete detachment to his arm, sometimes seeing it for the mess it was, and sometimes forgetting it was even there. But no matter the state of things, he didn't see it for what it was. No matter what had happened, one thing was for certain. To Kevin, it wasn't an arm anymore. When we got back to the parking lot, I spotted a man having a smoke next to his semi-truck. The moment I saw him, I called out, "Call an ambulance." "You hurt?" he called back, putting out his cigarette. "No, my friend, The man wasn't looking at Kevin. He looked straight past us, into the woods. My friend here, I said, nodding at Kevin. You can't see him? Is this a joke? What's wrong with you? I wanted to explain, but Kevin was getting worse. I opened the passenger side door and sat him down, struggling to get the arm in. I had to fold it into his lap, but the bones bent the wrong way. Kevin kept tipping over into the driver's seat, so I had to get in and push him back up. I finally got him upright using the seatbelt, but even then, he'd have to lean his head on my shoulder as we drove. I'm sorry, I called out to the man by the semi. It's complicated. I drove off, hoping I might get Kevin to a doctor, but it's like something had changed every time I looked over at him. At one point, his arm looked more like a leg. Then it looked like the top of a skull. I could see nerves sticking out, muscles shaping, bones poking in and out like pistons in a motor. All the while he kept trying to figure out what was supposed to go there. It wasn't an arm anymore, that he knew. Not a leg, not a hand, not a foot, not a head. Musculature and skin would shape and untangle into live wire nerve endings, reaching upwards like seaweed. The moment one of them touched the roof of the car, Kevin yelped like a wounded animal. His sudden movement caused more nerves to get pinched and trapped, cutting off the blood supply and strangling his own extremity. Somewhere in his panicked screams, I heard him form a coherent sentence. "Stop!" he cried. "Stop the car!" The moment I pulled the handbrake, he collapsed out the side, tearing at the seatbelt. His hand had grown necrotic in a matter of seconds. By the time I got out of the driver's seat, the hand had already dropped off the side of his body. It was just dead meat, lying flat on the road. By the time I blinked, something new had already started growing. "It's not an arm anymore!" Kev cried. "It's not a leg! Not a heart! Not a lung!" Bones from a rib cage took shape, only to be replaced by the pulsating rhythm of a heart, then fading into a leg muscle. All the while, Kevin couldn't stop crying and screaming, flailing his dying appendage around like he was trying to wake it up. Then I saw headlights, a car coming down the road. They had plenty of time to slow down, but they didn't. I yelled out, but Kevin didn't listen. I yelled and begged, but I couldn't get to him in time. The car didn't slow down, but it passed right through him. My heart was pounding in my ears as the headlights disappeared around the bend. Kevin just stood there, a second pulse crashing through his body, sending ripples that flared in his left eye. It grew so dark it looked like he blinked twice. I tried to speak, but it's like the air had gone out of my lungs. Finally, I coughed up a couple of words. "We gotta get you help. You gotta touch it to see it proper," he sobbed. "They can't see it proper. We'll figure it out. You gotta get back in the car." "It can't see me proper. I'll drop right through. It's getting worse." "I see you, Kev. I see you. We can work it out." "You didn't do it right," he sighed. You didn't look proper. Just tell me what you need me to do." "Just fucking look at me." I blinked, and Kevin was gone. I stood there, calling out to him like a dog barking in the night. I could hear his name reach all over the fields, but nothing came back. Just the wind, the traffic, and a dead hand left in the middle of the street. I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. People just seemed to forget he was ever there. Even his family seemed to forget his name and who he was. He would disappear from family pictures, much like how folks can't see the cube in the photos we took. The hand was a strange story in and of itself. See, it was more like a kind of fungus than human flesh, soft like marshmallow. The thing deteriorated rapidly, dissolving into a kind of black sludge. It smelled like acetone and chlorine that had been left to rot in the sun. I went back up the run-along river a final time before I had to leave for university, but I couldn't bring myself to touch the cube. I didn't want to imagine what had gone through Kevin's head when he was stuck out there for days on end. I didn't want to think about what he'd seen or heard. I wanted to figure it out, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it, not more than I already had. I couldn't let it get a tighter hold on me. I couldn't end up like that. I remember standing there, water rushing past my boots, balancing on a slippery river stone. I reached up. All I had to do was extend my trembling arm, but thinking about Kevin, I looked at my arm a little closer. It was an arm, that was for sure. But what would have to happen to my mind in order for me not to accept that? I didn't want to find out. I saw him around town at times. Just glimpses. He would lumber down the street trying to figure out what's wrong with his arm. He'd go through this mantra over and over, trying to make sense of it. I could see him walk into a coffee shop, trying to get someone to listen. Whenever he saw me, he would look at me with these dead white eyes. He wouldn't break his mumbling, but I could see the pleading in his expression, the question behind the words. I heard rumors about kids finding the occasional body part around town, but it'd be gone by the next day. Sometimes it'd only last a couple hours. Even though I moved, I tried to stay informed. Craziest thing was whenever I spotted him in pictures, and no one else seemed to notice. Saw an old classmate take a selfie outside the town library, and Kevin was sitting on the steps in the background. She only got one comment, and it was just saying she had a cute smile. But Kevin, he was different. It wasn't just a strange arm anymore. He was not a human. I moved far away after my university studies, and I haven't seen Kevin in decades. I have never really gotten rid of that sensation of not being around at times, but I've mapped it. It happens about once every 2.5 weeks, for a period of about 9 hours. I zone out, and it's like the world does too. People forget I'm supposed to be at work. My wife forgets my name. I don't drive during those hours. And since no one misses me, I make sure I do something inconsequential. Most of the time I stay at home, watching Netflix. I have yet to get in trouble for it. I don't think you can get rid of this once you're in it. If I'd stuck around or experimented, there's no doubt in my mind it would have gotten worse. Kevin got stuck in it, and I would be too. Not long ago I saw a YouTube short. It was on my recommended feed. There was this kid with a cell phone walking along a river and stopping to stare into the sky. You can hear him freaking out behind the camera. I saw what he looked at. I saw the cube for the first time in almost 30 years. If you pause in the exact right spot, you can see the X I carved on a tree in the background. But the comments didn't get it. To them, it was just a cloudy sky and an empty forest. The video had 3 comments, all of them spam bots. I can't believe it's still out there, waiting along the run-along river. Maybe Kevin is too.